Day 5 of the November 04 7-day retreat in Springwater. There often arises confusion in the thinking mind, and I emphasize in the thinking mind, whether there are two states of awareness and then the conditioned state of living our daily lives, whether they are incompatible or somehow compatible. It seems that one is aware of the conditioning and yet it keeps on going, which is distressing to a lot of people. They have hoped or expected that once the conditioned response is noticed, it will end. Once the anger that rises at a remark somebody makes about me, once the anger that arises is seen, it should be completely vanish. It should be completely finished, exhausted. So let us try to bring some order into this, but keep in mind this is just an order for the thinking mind. Actually, there is no disorder. Things are the way they are. But since we are so, I would say, burdened with the thinking, categorizing, order-making mind, let's follow it and see if we can help ourselves by saying there are roughly 3 states. I know there are 3,000. So, don't start listing all the remaining ones. The first state we will label with total immersion in self-centered thinking and feeling and emoting and reacting. It seems that is a windowless room, a room without doors. One is caught up in it and doesn't know it. There's just everything is seen in relation to me. How does it hurt me or help me? My advantages and my fears, and we all know that state better than any other. And then there is the state of insight, or the happening of insight into this self-centered living. It's caught all of a sudden that somebody said something, and here there is a reaction, and the reaction releases sort of some pollution into the system. Anger, fear, or semi-conscious storing it up for revenge, for future use. Actually, we often say, and I remember my mother saying that when she was very exasperated at us, "I will never forget this," and that really hurt. And I remember the first time I said it to my son, "I will never forget this," and I thought, my God, what did I just say? It came out before there was any awareness. So, that is a second level of being, where there is insight, but, I didn't finish that yet, but the anger has not been relieved. It still runs, because the thought or the storyline that has formed is not finished. It keeps on running. So there's like a parallel running of storyline, what she said or what happened to me, and awareing it. And there is a part of the thinking mindset that's not possible. Either there's awareness, I've heard Toni say that and other people, that either there is the one or the other. But contrary to what one has heard and read eminent people say, it happens. And please rely or don't throw out what you're experiencing just because somebody has said something different. Rather question it, and question it with a person who you can dialogue with. And that we become aware of being honest and not serving an image. Of the images is be consistent. A very strong training. Don't be inconsistent. Don't be, what did they call it in the last campaign? Flip-flopping. It's okay to flip-flop. To be aware of it and to be aware how it arises and what the circumstances are. And not get stuck on the idea, I have now gone to sesshin or to retreats for 7 years, I should not be flip-flopping anymore. I should have this straight insight and the vanishing of anger or fear. And it's been so emphasized. I remember often going to a Krishnamurti talk one time in a tent in Saanen in Switzerland. My sister was with me. She's a psychoanalyst. And Krishnamurti's topic was fear. And he said, I don't want any one of you to leave this tent and still have fear. When you leave this fear, you should be done with it. And my sister was just red hot with anger. How could anybody speak like that? And she was also angry as it being sort of like a captive audience. She couldn't say anything. Here, this man said that, and she sort of felt, rightly or not, that people were paying attention to that and maybe believing it. So there is very important in listening to teachers, gurus, whoever they call it, whatever they call themselves, not to take it over lock, stock, and barrel, but to keep open to see, is that what I can verify myself? The word verify has veritas in it, that is truth, that's a Latin word for truth. And also be gentle with that. You may not verify it, but keep it open that you may not be seeing completely. Just because at this moment it seems so clear that what this person says is off the mark, not to become insistent, but to be just open all the time to the subtle currents of wind and fragrance in the air. They change all the time. Right now it's the fragrance of fall, the leaves sort of melting away into this incredible fall fragrance. Pretty soon it'll be the smell of snow. So to be open to change, and yet let that openness be unchanging. Because that's the only thing that does not change, is the seeing, the attending, the awareing. These can be used, what's the word? Interchangeably, yes. Sometimes if you wonder, is this being used interchanged, ask. And we have an hour of group meeting and then smaller groups. Because words can be so confusing and so befuddling. Whereas the listening and the awareing is never confusing, because it brings confusion to light. Doesn't mean it eradicates confusion, but it throws light on the fact that the mind is befuddled, confused, doesn't know because it clings to one concept over another experience. So, and the third way of being is, I will not use that word permanent or everlasting, but there is a really solid, sustained awareness with no sustainer there. No one who does that, no one who flexes their muscles, exerts effort to remain aware. That's a false concept. It's just that the mind is quite free from the clouds of self-centered thinking. Not that they are not possible to draw together again. I asked somebody once who was a student, a scholar of Ramana Maharshi, who I feel is one of the greatest sages who lived contemporarily, because his life story was that at the age of 18, how was it? I read this book, I read it in German. It is an excerpt of all of his writing with a foreword by Jung, C.J. Jung. And the interesting thing was that the boy had never much been involved in spirituality or temple going. He was very ordinary, a profound sleeper, very deep sleep, so that sometimes his comrades in the school class would carry him someplace. And he didn't wake up for quite a while. Such a profound sleeper he was. And then, if the biography is correct, and I have no reason to doubt it, he once woke up to the fact that he was dying. He was absolutely certain this was the end of his life. 18 years he was old, and he decided that if he was going to die, let me die with awareness, with full consciousness. I want to be there and witness this whole process. And when this process was through, I don't know the details for that, he dropped his name and didn't talk for 3 years. He left his home, went to some kind of a temple that he had heard about from an uncle or a relative. He found that and sat there and sat and sat. He never would have eaten or gotten up if there hadn't been devotees, which is the thing in India, somebody who is meditative or saintly in behavior and looks is being taken care of. People go there and take care of this person. This is part of the Indian culture. So they would take vermin and ants and insects off of his body and feed him, spoon feed him, or however they did that, probably hand feed. And implored him to impart some of what he was experiencing, which he started doing after 3 years. It finally dawned on him, maybe through the ardor of the devotees who took care of him, that there was some obligation to share. He had no vocabulary yet, but there were enough erudite scholars of Hindu theology and stuff who provided him with the words needed to faintly express what really cannot be expressed. And he was indefatigable after that in meeting with people. He never allowed his attendants to keep somebody out of meeting him. It wasn't much of a talking thing, but it is more to be in the presence of a holy man that is so treasured in India. and other Eastern countries, maybe Western too. So, having read these biographical tidbits, I always had the feeling here is a person who really the ego was wiped out like with a bolt of lightning at the moment he experienced his dying. Because he didn't know or want anymore any name that just didn't fit the state of being. It was nameless. And yet, somebody who came here and had studied Ramana Maharshi said that when he was asked, do you have some ego left? He said, of course it bubbles up, but it is instantly seen and instantly dissolves. So it was neat to hear that. I haven't read it myself, but this person had heard him say this. And why not? He was a human being born of a human mother and father. Mother, father. And these circuits of self-preservation and thinking in terms of me and mine are so quickly there, already while the baby is in womb, and certainly as soon as it is out of womb. And the brain so programmed to collect and to lay down knowledge for future reference, for security. We talk so much about needing security, and please let never combine that with disdain of the fact that we seek security. We always have to emote over everything we notice. This is not very good and I should be rid of this by now. Rather than this generous, open, acknowledging and seeing what goes on in this human being. Because with this, you see and acknowledge what goes on in all human beings, no matter what race or creed or political party or time in history. So it's a firm program. Well, the firmest program, of course, is the self-preservation. In each cell of this body, there is the multiple program of preserving, of surviving. And very interesting that the self-story, the self-image and its continuous story about me, my life, my family, my property, my talents, my memories, my family. This story is accepted, or seems to be accepted by the brain as worthy of keeping surviving, just like the body. Do you get what I'm saying? The instinct for physical survival, which is in every little tiny little fruit fly, or so you try to catch it and it gets away. Amazing how these flies get away. They just have eyes on their backs everywhere. They're so in touch with a persecutor. You give up and think, well, if they want to live that badly, let them live. Unless they're not all over the cheese and butter and stuff. I am all over the cheese and butter. So, but this is what I was going to say, and I think you get the drift. The image we make of ourselves, we adorn with all kinds of trait and features. If you're a very visual person, it's very visual how you see yourself, and verbal how you think of yourself. There is an ever-growing attachment to this image and its story, which may include disdain for it, as also attachment. It may be positive or negative. We talked about that yesterday, how the brain thinks and acts and perceives in contrast, in opposites. It's still one perceiving. So, this image and its continuous story, which fills our little library, or our huge library, is loved and attached to physically. There's a physical attachment to this story, and we can test it by seeing when somebody questions it or insults me in that story, tries to diminish me or put somebody else as better or so, there's an instant physical reaction, which we call envy or jealousy, irritation. It's all an open book for each one of us to read. You don't have to remember the words, you start watching. The moment you feel hurt, the instant you feel hurt, the physical hurt of insult or feeling neglected, unloved, question it. What is it that feels hurt right now? But not just as a rote question that you now begin repeating, who is hurt, who is hurt, who is hurt? But who is hurt? What is going on here? And follow it and have your own dialogue with yourself. Question and answer. Is it because now I think he or she doesn't see me, they want the way I want to be seen? Ask it and then be quiet and let this thing be looked at, this question or this proposition. And honestly say, yeah, there is something there. I really would like to be seen this way and not that way. Or you say, no, I don't see that, but I'm still hurt. So why am I hurt? And keep this dialogue open. And you will have amazing results of self-knowledge by this dialogue, which includes quiet listening. Is this really so? And allowing the body-mind to open up and throw into the play all the kept images and hidden griefs and hidden grudges or pains, hurts. So, yeah, we started out. The mind is clear today. It was good to have a free day. I didn't forget what I was going to say. There were these three ways of being. One totally immersed in self-reference, self-flattery or self-hating, self-promoting or self-pitying, a big, big one. One of they're seemingly running a parallel life of witnessing all of this. In some traditions, this is called witnessing. It's a good word. Because there's also the feeling there is a witnesser there. Somebody mentioned that yesterday. I cannot get rid of this feeling that there is an observer who is a being. I don't know what that is, but it feels like a being. Observer. And important not to deny it or think that after 30 years of doing this work there shouldn't be one anymore, when one really feels there is. But go to trace it down, track it down. What is this observer? And dialogue either with a friend who is interested in this like you are, or with yourself. Is it that I cannot let go of the deep conviction that there is an observer, just alone the idea of it. So deep. There is a me that watches itself. This is very verbal, but just because it makes sense logically or verbally doesn't mean that there is such an entity that observes, just because of a very convincing formulation in language. So, I think we're all here together on this, the feeling, although I'm not participating in that particular aspect anymore. I don't have the feeling that there's an observer because I don't think that there is one. There isn't any need for it because you open your eyes and everything is here. The shades and the microphone and this hand reaching out and the people and the physical feelings. Being warm, and can I take this jacket off? Is that okay? No. We'll see, huh? Oh, no, we don't. Took too much effort to get this thing together. 30 years or so? So we don't want to destroy 30 years' effort of getting something on a picture. But when you will work it out? Okay. But we still want to have the TV. Makes it a little bit interesting. Now, yeah, okay. Thanks. What was that? Oh, there, empty. Here. Help me with this too so I don't throw over stuff. Okay. Thanks, Steve. So we were at the parallel lines, if I remember right. There being the feeling that there is an observer who is a being. And when I started teaching in the Zen tradition, I didn't care so much for the koan mu, but what made more sense was to ask who. That was another beginning practice, to ask who am I? It seemed to make a little bit more sense, be a little bit more grasping for people, graspable, reachable, to ask who am I? But then I realized that it's a tricky question because built in it is already the assumption that there is somebody there. Because everything in spiritual training is made difficult for you to surmount, to break through these walls. So maybe a better question word is what? What is hearing or what is attending? Not already assume a who in there, because then it's even harder to get away from this entity, idea. And there comes something in this spiritual struggle, if you will, which needs to be worked with and struggled with. I can't say should or must, but nothing in this comes easy because the convictions and conditioning is so deep, so strong, so all pervading. Everybody since day one. If there ever was such a thing, I don't think so, but so ask into a bottomless well, dark bottomless well. What is this observer? And then be quiet, like we talked about before. Just let a listening unfold, which is dark, meaning not knowing. No projection of future, no light at the end of the tunnel. That's all brainwork. And spiritual meditative inquiry is quieting down of the brain to the point of really quieting down, except for its very necessary processes of keeping this organism alive. Heartbeat, breathing, metabolism, whatever all goes on so unfathomably well without anyone here directing it. We think we can't let go of this ego because we're in charge, but are we in charge of how this body functions, this incredible moment of breathing and aliving? It's not knowable. It's only afterwards we think about it and write things down. So, pursue your question until you don't know anymore who is asking or what you're asking, but ask, because that is a state of body-mind. It's no longer an intellectual, philosophical, theological, spiritual question. It is a state of being that doesn't know. It doesn't know, and in this not knowing, the energy gathering in wondering. And it's a beautiful word, both in German and in English. Wondering, the same as wonder, the wonder of presence, we call it the book, or the wonder of being, the wonder of attending, and also not knowing. So, and there may be fears arising because the brain wants to know. It's its task. It is its obligation and duty to know, to keep the organism feeling safe. And it has learned to feel safe if it knows a whole lot of stuff about itself and the people it's with and the environment. These are all learned securities. So one has to learn freshly to be at ease even though these props aren't there right now. So to learn to live with insecurity without sort of reaching for handles, to walk the steps without handles, with a deep trust. Now you could say, well, what are you trusting in? And it's different for each one. People have conditioned trusts and faiths, which is, I'm not attacking any of that. And I never used the word trust, or what is the other word? Yeah, trust. Until I realized that my whole daily life is one of trust. Not in somebody or in something, but just trust that everything is okay the way it is. How can I put that better? It has to do with the fact that ever since starting this work, I started it when I was 40 years old. That's when traditionally, particularly in this country, I don't know whether other places too, people start thinking this is a beginning of a bad period of your time. 40, the life crisis. For me, it was just the other way around. It was the beginning of unfolding with this meditative work. And no matter how many things happened in my non-meditative life, like particularly in my childhood, the horrible fears and anxieties of whether one would survive with a Jewish mother, whether one would survive Nazi doings, concentration camp denunciation and so forth. There I had no faith at all, no trust. I was very, very fearful child, always praying that my mother may not be taken away or the house may not burn down. But there was very little faith in this prayer, particularly since so much happened. And I told you the line drawings in my little Bible, which scared me a lot. But since starting this work, there has unfolded something which, for lack of a better word, I call complete trust. And when leaving the Zen Center, and half of the membership came with those of us who wanted to start a new place, and there were all kind of dire predictions. One woman that was still a terrific thing at the time. She was a computer expert and could sort of put on the computer the probabilities of our surviving. And it looked dismal. Do you remember that, people? That the curve going up and then it went down below the drowning level. So, but that I didn't laugh quite as loud as you do right now. But it didn't affect me because there was this trust, and I think it came from doing retreat and always touching this place where there is no conditioned fear, no conditioned response, but an aliveness and lovingness, in touchness, non-separation, which is not a big fireworks, a 4th of July kind of thing. It's not that. It's just clarity and presence and love, withness. And no matter how dire the predictions and whatever ups and downs we've had with sometimes the most valuable staff people leaving, needing to do something else, and then wondering, well, who's going to take his or her place? It always worked out. There was never, ever a real crisis for somebody would apply even though there weren't any applications in sight before the person gave notice, and then somebody showed up out of nowhere, different countries or places. So from experience, really concrete experience, grew this trust too, that it has always worked. There's no reason or that it won't keep working. And now I feel very, very, very confident that even if I go, when I don't know, the neurosurgeon said at least 87. Not that I die in 87, but that I will live to see 87 years old, not 19, 87, let's go. So, where did this trust thing come from? Well, you put it in where you need it. To come back to one of the most basic and repeatedly occurring questions being, what is this business of seeing my errors, seeing my conditioning and my stupidities, and they go on. And to shift from a subtle or not so subtle thought that they shouldn't be going on to seeing it without any desire that things be otherwise. That is a tremendous step to take. It may not be taken immediately, but The quicker it comes, the better, because you spare yourself a lot of heartache and other ache by thinking it shouldn't be like this, I should by now be free of thought or something. Really one of the craziest thoughts to be free of thought. But to realize, yeah, it is possible to be aware of conditioned life, living, without it's immediately stopping and appreciating, if you will, the power of it, the strength of it, and with that becoming more forgiving of our so-called enemies. They are in the same pot, they can't do any different. May not want to either, but that's part of their conditioning. So, the parallelity, or what do you call it, parallelness of awareing and conditioning, and also at times of a deep presence and meditative gathering of energy, a conditioned response that may be evoked has no survival. It cannot survive. It is zapped in this powerful presence of nowness, here-ness with its love and wisdom. And be wise not to want this to last or to stay, because then it's gone already. But realize that this desire comes up because of the way we're conditioned, which does not mean it could stay away too. That happens more and more, that these conditioned responses, I wish I would keep this, or I wouldn't fall back, they just are like so much dust in the light. You know dust in the light, don't you? And the projector, I was fascinated as a child. We had a lot of movies, home movies. And that, before the movies started, all this dust in the light. It was beautiful. So we will end here for today.